Medusa was minding her own business, being a beautiful woman.
How dare she? In this economy?
What are you doing, being attractive?
How dare you be pretty? What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 29-year-old man who has never read the Percy Jackson series. I have finished the first book, though, so I'm making my way, but I am on a quest to determine if this is a book series that we've all been sleeping on. I'm not on this quest alone, though. This time, I'm joined again by our Greek mythological correspondent in order to talk about Greek myths and the like. It's Dr. Moiya McTier, who is the host of Exolore and the co-host of the new PBS Digital Studios YouTube show, Fate and Fabled. Dr. Moiya, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm so happy to be here, Mike. Thanks for letting me be your myth correspondent.
Thank you for being the myth correspondent. I think being it is much greater of a task than me letting you do it, because for me, it's just, have a smart person that's also fun and entertaining and charming talk about myths. Sure, I guess I'll do that.
Well, from my perspective, it's, I get to read about ancient stories that people told around campfires as my job. Yes, please.
Pretty sweet. So this episode has been long hyped, and I'm glad that it is here. And we will be doing one of these in between each of the books. And I know many people are excited. My mother especially is very excited for this episode because she's not super familiar with Greek mythological stuff. So she told me, she said, Michael, I am so looking forward to the episode with Dr. Moiya. She was such a great guest, and I'm so excited to learn more. I can't wait for you to get to that one.
Oh, that is so nice. I've never met Mama Schubert, listeners, but I now want to do everything I can to make her so proud.
Barb is great. I'm a very lucky boy to have Barb in my life. She's a good mother. No, she's a perfect mother and a great companion of, I'm walking to the grocery store and I need time to kill. Let me phone up mom. Fantastic for that.
Love that for both of you.
So there's a lot of things that we want to talk about, and the things that I've compiled into this list come from two main sources. One, things that I said in past episodes where I said, I'm going to ask Dr. Moiya about this. Shout out to transcripts for not only being nice for accessibility, but also me Ctrl+Fing to see what's all the stuff that I said I was going to ask you about.
Oh, nice.
But also a bunch of folks at the Ultra God tier patron level of the Newest Olympian Patreon. With that, you get to be a member of the Olympic Court, where you help shape things when I don't know exactly what to cover, if we're going in between or when I get to spin off stuff, or in this case, hey, what myths do you want to know the most about? And then I ranked them in order of most desired. Nice. So we're going to get to as much as we can in this hour. The first thing I want to ask you right off the bat, and this was a good question that came from the Olympic Court, what are the sources of Greek mythology? And then which are the most reputable? And has that changed over time? And if so, how? Because, it feels like you can't just go to one place for these. So how do you get these myths?
How does one mythology? So I think it's important to start off here with the fact that all of these myths were stories that were told orally for a very long time, something that people might tell around a campfire or in a tavern or like a bedtime story at night. These were then written down by people, and what we know as the Greek mythos today is what was written down. So there are a few well-known sources that are probably going to be referenced a lot. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, definitely up there. These are two epic stories that were told by mouth for a very long time until they were written down around 750 BCE. Homer, definitely up there. Another one is Hesiod's Theogony. This is a poem, an epic poem that describes the origins and genealogy of Greek gods, kind of in chronological order. So if you just want to know, how did the Greek people think that the universe was formed and how did gods play into that? It's basically like a story from beginning to end. Might not be the most easy to read story, but it's there.
Sounds informative for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that was written after Homer, so around 700 BC. And then there are the Homeric hymns, which we attribute to Homer, even though it's a collection of anonymous poems that talk about the Olympian gods. Those are the top three. And then there are plays, mostly tragedies, by people like Euripides and Sophocles. These are people who wrote the Bacchae or Antigone or the story of Oedipus Rex. So if you are familiar with any of those Greek plays, they draw from this source material of Homer's works and the oral stories that have been told for a long time. I know that Julia on Spirits is particularly fond of Edith Hamilton's Mythology book. It's a big text that goes through and talks about a bunch of different myths, not just Greek, I think Roman and Norse too. So
cool.
Those are where I would go first. But honestly, there are so many places on the internet that aren't primary sources where you can learn a lot about mythology. Wikipedia is actually pretty good.
Oh, cool. Nice. Good.
Yeah, I would say that. There's this other one that I go to, like Theoi, THEOI.org, that I go to. And because mythology is something that is based on stories that people have told, there's not one right story. Like there's not an original version of the myth. So a lot of these places are pretty good as resources.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Good to know. Getting into the stories, one that a lot of people wanted to know about, which I think makes sense. Our main character is Percy Jackson. What's the deal with Perseus? The limited thing I know is that he defeated Medusa, right? That's him. And he's one of the few heroes to have an okay situation turn out for him.
Right. Yeah. Heroes in any sort of mythology don't usually have a happy ending. Hercules certainly didn't. Jason really didn't. But Perseus has an okay life, actually. So Perseus is a demigod. He's the son of Zeus. So there's one big difference between Perseus and Percy. So Perseus is the son of Zeus and a human woman named Danae. And this is a common thing in Greek mythology, but there is a prophecy that the king of Argos, who happened to be Perseus's grandfather, would one day be slain by his grandson. He actually imprisoned his daughter in a bronze dungeon so that she wouldn't get married or have a kid. And then Zeus came into this dungeon as a golden rain shower. Pause for laughter.
Zeus is a golden shower? Come on.
Yeah, Zeus literally impregnates this woman as a golden shower.
Oh, no.
And then the king of Argos comes in like 9 months later and his daughter has a baby. So he casts them out of his kingdom. They find help. Perseus grows up to be this very strong man who becomes a hero. And so, like you said, his main claim to fame is that he kills Medusa. He actually does that with Athena and Hermes' help.
All right.
They give him guidance on how to go and kill Medusa. And then he does. He uses a reflection, like Percy does in the book, to cut off Medusa's head. And then he uses that head. He carries it around with him for years, using it to kill other monsters. One monster that he does kill is Cetus, which is this big sea monster attacking a kingdom. I think it was sent by Poseidon. And Cetus was going to have the princess Andromeda sacrificed to him. So Andromeda was chained to this rock. Perseus, wearing the winged shoes of Hermes, because he had this god's help, he flies by this rock, sees Andromeda chained there, and immediately falls in love, and then decides to save her by slaying Cetus, the sea monster. And he does. He marries Andromeda. They have a bunch of kids. One of their kids goes on to give birth to Hercules. So Perseus is Hercules' grandfather and also his half-brother, because they're both Zeus's son.
Cool.
Yeah, that's Perseus for you.
Wow, incredible. So when he defeated Medusa, did he use the reflection to turn her back into stone, or did he use a mirror so that it wouldn't... How did he kill her is my question.
Yeah. So he uses a shield, actually a very shiny shield, to see Medusa's reflection, because through the reflection, you can't be turned into stone.
Gotcha.
So he just uses that to figure out where Medusa is so that he can cut off her head.
Okay.
Very similar to what Percy did. And I just want to say, I think it's a little messed up that in the Percy Jackson series, they say that if you cut something off of a monster, it becomes a trophy. It's just messed up.
Why is it messed up? I mean, I guess, I don't know. I've never hunted anything. I've never even gone fishing.
That's fair. I did grow up in a community where hunting was very popular, so it was very rare for me to go into a house that didn't have a deer head on the wall.
Gotcha.
But I just think that when you kill a monster in this book series, it dissolves or it turns into dust, except for a body part that you cut off with the express purpose of bragging to other people that you killed this monster. I just feel like it's a messed up incentive system.
Yeah, I guess the only good thing about it would be that I feel like if you defeat, at least in these books, if you defeat a monster, they turn to dust and then they come back anyway.
Yeah.
So at least you get a receipt. Look at me, I did it. But yeah, in normal circumstances, I don't know that trophying is cool. Okay, so the shield makes sense because when I was in Italy, I went to the Uffizi gallery or museum, I think the museum, but that is where the coolest thing in the whole museum is Medusa's head painted onto a shield.
Ooh.
That is the coolest thing in the whole place that I saw. I really thought it was very fun and fancy. And I definitely forgot what museum it was in the episode of the New Olympian where I talked about this. So this was just a long way for me to say I did Google and remember that it was the Uffizi before recording. And I'm probably mispronouncing it and all of that. But going to Medusa, there were a fair number of folks who asked about Medusa and her origin story, because a lot of feedback that I got is when we did the episode where you get the Anti-M chapter, a lot of people said that what was described in the Percy Jackson book was a bit watered down in terms of how intense it was and also making Poseidon not look like a big jerk. So I guess what is the more accurate, if this is inaccurate as it was described in The Lightning Thief, what's the most reputable origin story for Medusa?
Yeah, see, this is tricky because I said before that there is no right version of this myth. There's no original version. And it all has to do with translations and how things are interpreted. What we have about the Medusa myth is very basically that Medusa was a beautiful woman who served as a priestess in one of Athena's temples. Athena is one of the maiden goddesses, so she took this vow of chastity, and all of her priestesses also had to take this vow of celibacy. In the myths, we get that Medusa lies with Poseidon. This is air quotes, lies with Poseidon in Athena's temple. And that is very vague and open to interpretation. So we also have to look at this in terms of cultural lenses. Like, we have a very different culture of how we treat women, how we treat sex and intimacy than they did in ancient Greece. So that is definitely going to paint how we interpret this Medusa story. An older, less feminist interpretation of this Medusa story is that Medusa is a hoe and that she seduced Poseidon in Athena's temple, and that Athena was rightfully super offended and then had to punish Medusa by turning her into this monster. A more modern interpretation, which is something that I am, tempted to go along with because I am a modern feminist, is that Medusa was minding her own business, being a beautiful woman in a time when men had a lot of power over them.
How dare she in this economy?
In this economy. What are you doing being attractive?
How dare you be pretty? Hey, this is post-recording Mike. I just wanted to give a little bit of a content warning here. You can probably see where things are going, but in this next iteration of the Medusa and Poseidon myth, things get a little physical. So if you don't want to hear about that, you can skip forward 15 seconds and you should be good.
So in some modern retellings or in some modern interpretations, Poseidon rapes Medusa, and Athena sees that and takes it as an offense to her, and then still chooses to punish Medusa instead of Poseidon.
Yeah. It also would feel like, if we're just trying to go, and maybe this is a modern lens, but it feels like Poseidon as the god might be the person in more of the position of power. So this could be your classic abuse of power romantic endeavor.
Right, absolutely. There are so many ways to interpret it, and most of them that you hear today will paint Medusa as a victim and say that she fell prey to Poseidon, a more powerful male figure. Older interpretations would say that she had more agency. It's up to you which interpretation you want to use, but I think that no matter which interpretation you do use, it definitely says something about power dynamics between men and women, about the relationship between women and their jealousy towards each other when it comes to sex and intimacy and relationships and perceived affairs. There's a lot in the Medusa story, and I think that it's to the eye of the beholder what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, I think the eye of the beholder certainly makes sense there's a really cool statue of Medusa slaying Perseus, right? Where they kind of flip the script on it. I don't know who it's by, but it is a very cool statue that some folks have sent me before. I'm going to see if I can find who did it. It is a sculpture by Luciano Garbati, a 45-year-old Argentine-Italian artist based in Buenos Aires, who made this in 2008, apparently. So, cool stuff.
That's when I would expect that to be made, that like flipping on its head of the story.
Yeah, it would probably take a little bit for that to happen. A question that I have about Medusa, was there a reason that her punishment was snakes that freeze people? Is there any sort of symbolic nature behind it, or is Athena just making her life very difficult?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if there's any symbolism in the snakes in particular, but the gist of this punishment was that Athena was jealous that Medusa was so beautiful that all of these men, and it's not just Poseidon, it was a lot of, in some myths, it was many men who came to Athena's temple and were distracted by Medusa, or who came to Athena's temple not to see Athena, but to see Medusa. And so she just wanted to punish Medusa in a way that took away her beauty, because that was what Athena was jealous of.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her beauty and her ability to interact with men, or anyone, but especially men.
Yeah. So that makes sense as to why Athena would help Perseus. Is there a reason why Hermes got in the mix too?
There might be some old alliances there, or it might be just like random, some of these are, even today when you make a story, sometimes you have to do what's convenient for the plot. So you just like have to add characters in that will make sense later, and it makes sense for Perseus to be able to fly. So he has Hermes' shoes, and like maybe that's why.
Got it.
But I don't know.
I also like to imagine, I don't know if you've seen the John Wick movies, but there is a code type thing where if you help someone out, they have to help you out later. So maybe Hermes was just doing Athena a solid so that later on down the road, Athena could do Hermes a solid if he needed something to be done for revenge or what have you.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm sure that there are so many transactional interactions in mythology where it's like a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of situation.
Intertransactions, if you will.
Yes, I will.
So another question that I found very interesting, and I'm glad people asked, what are the different meanings behind the animal symbols that we see in this book? So the ones at least that I picked up on were Ares with the boar, Hera with the peacock, Athena with the owl, Poseidon with a horse, and an eagle for Zeus. I don't know if we'll learn more in future books if we learn more about the cabins, but at least for these, I guess we can start. What's up with the boar and Ares?
That's a great example. So first, if I may.
You may. Whatever you're about to say, you may do.
Thank you. Symbolism is really important for religion. Having the ability to make connections between concrete reality and abstract concepts is really necessary before you can have a religion that people subscribe to. And we had to evolve that. Our brains had to develop the space and the ability to create these symbolic representations. So symbolism is really important in religion and mythology. That's one point. Another point is because myths are created as a reflection of nature, there are strong ties between mythical figures and parts of nature based on their characteristics. So parts of nature like animals and plants. And these associations are based on those characteristics. So owl being wise and Athena being wise, that's because of the association between them. But some of these associations are also influenced by older cultures that get tied up into Greek mythology. And it's kind of weird because we think of Greek mythology as being super old, but there were so many religions and mythologies that are older than that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you brought up Ares and the boar, because I read earlier that in Celtic cultures, the boar was a symbol of wartime.
Oh, okay.
And they actually used it on the backs of coins and in different symbolism for war. And that was probably used, or it was probably an influence of Ares, the god of war, being represented by a boar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's this weird mix of being influenced by other cultures and seeing the associations between what you think your god is like and the animal characteristics that you see. Like the fox is sly and the spider is cunning. These things get tied up into religion and gods in kind of random ways.
Okay. Is that why Poseidon is a horse? Because a horse is powerful and sometimes unpredictable like the ocean?
Yeah.
Because I found that to be surprising when they said, oh yeah, he's the god of the horses, by the way. I said, wait a second, it is very different than water.
I think we will get to that in a bit, but
we will.
All of these gods have multiple animals and plants and items of power that are associated with them. So Poseidon has the horse. He also has the dolphin.
Okay.
Yeah, but Poseidon made the horse.
Given the way dolphins mate, that kind of makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. The sad day as children when we all learn that dolphins are not nice in that area.
With so many animals, like ducks and chickens.
Oh, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
That's another podcast. We don't have to get into that. Is anyone a golden lion, or was me thinking at one point offhandedly in the books, Percy is on a train and he sees a golden lion, and my prediction was this is some sort of god, but I think it might just be his eyes are opening. That's what Johnny, my guest, said. It could just be him seeing things that the mortals don't see. Is anyone a golden lion, or was I wilding?
I don't think any of the gods are golden lions.
Okay.
I mean, all of these gods shapeshift, and there are so many stories of gods shapeshifting into different figures so that they can usually have sex with humans without them noticing or without like their godly spouse being aware of the affair. But I think that the lion that Percy saw was probably the Nemean lion, and that your guest was right, that Percy's eyes are being open to the mythological world around him, like he's seeing through the mist, which in addition to seeing gods also means he's going to see these other mythical figures and creatures like the Nemean lion.
Okay. So we talked about the animals. You mentioned briefly on the symbols of power, which is something else people wanted to know more about. So is there any history behind the most important, or at least most titular of them, Zeus's bolt? What's the big story behind that, aside from him using it to zap people he doesn't like?
Well, Zeus is the god of the sky. And so clouds, lightning, thunder, like all the things that happen in the sky are under Zeus's domain. And lightning being something that is such a powerful force of nature, if the lightning strikes, you can see it from very far away. You can tell that it can do a lot of damage. It seems very powerful. And so it makes sense to take this really awesome, in like the old way of using the word, an awesome phenomenon in nature and assigning it or associating it with your most powerful god in your pantheon. I think in mythology itself, more stories around the lightning bolt are that it was one of the tools or weapons invented by Hephaestus, who is the mining god or the metalworking god, the metalsmithing god.
The crafty god.
Crafty, yeah.
The Portland god.
So he made instruments and tools for a lot of different gods, including, according to some, this lightning bolt.
Okay, so in the book, it is very much Zeus has the master bolt, and that is how he uses the power. Is that a more common interpretation as opposed to Zeus has lightning powers and can kind of just summon them innately? Is it usually they have a physical thing that lets them use the power, or is it sometimes the other way around? It's
sometimes the other way around, and I think that for a lot of people who, would have lived back then, I'm not sure there would have been much of a distinction between those two. There's a lot of fuzziness around whether a god uses a tool or they have a power inherent to themselves, or if they are the physical embodiment of something. Maybe some believed that Zeus himself could wield lightning, or some people might have believed that he had the master lightning bolt and then every other piece of lightning that you would see just came from that. Some might have believed that Zeus was lightning itself. It all gets wrapped up in each other.
Okay. So moving on, Hades' Helm of Darkness, which I thought had a very cool description in the books. What's the story behind that one?
Like, where did it come from? What does it do?
Yeah, is there any other instances of it being used? Because at least the way it's described here, it's how he can lurk in the shadows and in the darkness and go undetected and invisible. Are there any stories of Hades using that or using a power similar to that?
I imagine he probably would have used the helm to take Persephone.
Okay, yeah.
Anything he did involving sneaking. I'm not sure, but I feel like I remember stories of Hades using the helm to sneak up to Olympus, because there were only certain times when he was allowed there, but I'm not totally sure about that. When I was looking into Perseus myths, so he got help from Hermes and Athena, who told him to go to the Grey Sisters. And the Grey Sisters are these three figures who each only share one eye and one tooth between them.
Oh, they were in Hercules, the Disney movie.
Yeah, exactly. And they then guide Perseus to Medusa. But they also have Hades' helm of darkness with them
okay.
there. I don't know too many other myths about it, but that's what I have for you.
Cool. And then the final one that we saw, at least on display, was the winged shoes, or in this case, the winged basketball shoes. Is there history behind how Hermes got those, other uses of them besides the Perseus example that you gave?
I love that they were basketball shoes in the book. That makes me so happy.
I think it's so good.
Yeah. I feel like Rick Riordan could teach a masterclass in taking old classical myths and adapting them into what they would be like in modern times. Like, so good at that.
Mm-hmm.
So the winged shoes, Hermes is the messenger god. He is the swift-footed liaison between Olympus and other mythical figures. So he would go back and forth between Olympus and Hades. He would do a lot of dirty work for Zeus. So there are plenty of stories of Zeus asking Hermes to kind of clean up some of the messes from his affairs for him, which we will talk about in a little bit if we get to Argus. But I think that one of the reasons that's associated with Hermes, these winged shoes, is because to be a messenger, you have to be very fast. You have to be able to get places quickly, so flying quickly makes sense. The Roman counterpart to Hermes, which did come after because the Romans kind of stole a lot of culture from the Greeks, is Mercury. And Mercury was the name given to the planet closest to the sun. I can't not bring astronomy into it.
Hell yeah, love it.
And Mercury is the planet that goes around the sun the fastest. It's closest, so it is the swiftest. And so there's this connection between Hermes and sending messages and being fast and, winged shoes.
That's fantastic. I love it. I think the coolest of the power items, just so iconic. Why did he get the caduceus, though? Or at least, does the caduceus make more sense? And then are we whack for making it a medical thing? It just feels so different in terms of Hermes' whole vibe and then hospitals.
Right. I think it is separate.
Okay.
I remember the caduceus, the medical one. This is like the snake being wrapped around the stick. I remember the origin of that being basically like old surgeons having to remove tapeworms from people and making an incision, drawing the tapeworm out, and then using a stick to like slowly twirl the tapeworm out of someone.
Okay.
And that's where that symbol came from. I don't know of any stories that explicitly tie Hermes to medicine. He's not the god of medicine. There are other gods that do that.
Okay.
Like Apollo. So I'm not sure where that connection came from.
Is there a reason why the Hermes cabin in the books has the caduceus symbol outside of it then?
Probably, but I don't know what it is. Now I want to look it up.
Hermes caduceus. Google says the caduceus is the staff carried by Hermes in Greek mythology. So I guess maybe he already had that, and then your tapeworm thing was just a postscript addition that didn't really make sense for Hermes himself, except for that he had the thing.
Yeah. When the symbol is outside the cabin, does it have the snake wrapped around it?
I think so. I'm pretty sure that's what the description was.
Interesting. This is going to haunt me.
Oh, no. Well, shut it all down, folks.
So we'll talk about it next time.
Hello and welcome to this episode's Lightning Brief. First, I'm very excited to announce that the patron-exclusive stickers have finally arrived, and they are absolutely gorgeous, and we've already begun mailing them out to patrons. If you support at the God tier or above, you will get access to stickers. You will be sent a greenish, blue, teal, aqua, whatever the color of the logo is. I'm colorblind, so I couldn't tell you. One is that color, the other one is yellow, and it says "See you later." It's a design that my wife Kelly helped make, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It has a really cool 3D effect. The font itself is this very old school 70s font, and the sticker itself is a clear background sticker. So aside from the lettering, everything else is clear. So it is transparent and you can put it on whatever you want, and it's going to look absolutely gorgeous. If you want to see photos of what these stickers look like, you can check out the podcast on social media, whether you go to Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. We are at Newest Olympian, and you can see photos of the stickers and what they look like when they are stuck on something. I am incredibly biased, but I think you're going to love them. And if you are at the pin tier, you will have to wait a little bit longer to get your stickers because the pins are also in production. They are going to have a similar design to the yellow sticker, but they will be a gold pin, and I'm very excited about that. But production of those is taking a little bit longer, so hold tight there. But we've got the stickers, and if you join at the $10 tier or above at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, you can get access to stickers. So if you want them, check out the Patreon. Also, if you like some of the other podcasts that I host and you want to see those live, whether that is digitally or in person. I've got some stuff coming up in the near future. On February 3rd, 2022, Adam and I are doing a Digital Horse live show where we will be ranking from worst to first every NBA dance team. This is a stream show, so wherever you get the internet, you can watch it, and it will be happening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. But when you buy tickets, you get access to a replay link, so you don't have to watch it live. You can just watch it from the comfort of your own home, and that will be very exciting. And later down the road, in March and April, I've got some live shows for Potterless coming up on March 3rd. We will be in Nashville on March 4th. We will be in Atlanta, Georgia. On March 31st, we will be in Washington, D.C. And on April 21st, we will be in Seattle, Washington. If you want to get tickets to those Potterless live shows, you can go to potterlesspodcast.com/live. Hopefully the world is safe enough to have those shows, but things are looking good, so I'm excited to have those. Speaking of support, speaking of the Patreon, we have new members of our team over at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, and I want to give a shout out to them. So shout out to our newest Mega God tier patron, Megan Wright, our newest Super God tier patron, Mariah Camarena, our newest God tier patrons, Kevin, Aaliyah Slater, and Mara Lewis, and our newest Demigod tier patrons, Lydia Jones, Eve Olson, Andreas Bier, Harold Thompson, Kate Bancroft, and Agumame. Thank you so much for all of your support. I cannot thank you all enough. And speaking of support, I also want to thank Multitude for having us as a part of the collective. There are a lot of other great podcasts that Multitude makes that you can listen to. One, if you are really enjoying this episode, you really like Dr. Moiya, you like her nerding out about various things, well, she hosts a podcast with Multitude, and it's called Exolore, and you'll probably enjoy it. Every other week, Dr. Moiya explores fictional worlds by building them with a panel of expert guests, interviewing professional world builders, or reviewing the merits of worlds that have already been built. I'm recording this mere minutes before my first guest appearance on Exolore, so depending on when you are listening to this, that episode might be out. We're going to do a bracket on all of the worlds she has built on Exolore before, and I'm very excited about it. If you want to listen to the show, you can just search for Exolore, EXOLORE, wherever you get your podcasts, or going to exolorepod.com. And finally, before we wrap up here, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of these ads will be read by me, others of them won't. The ones that aren't read by me are inserted locally, so if you live in Senegal, don't be surprised if you hear a Senegalese ad. And once those ads are complete, we will get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. Speaking of haunting, the next thing on the list was people wanted to know about the Furies and their responsibilities, and I find them very interesting, especially because my introduction to them in Hades the video game is so different from how they are in the book. So I'm interested to hear what their Greek mythology main most common story is.
Yeah, and I'm interested in knowing more about the game.
They're basically just super hot in the game is what it is.
Oh, got it. They are not that in Greek mythology. So the Furies, or the Erinyes, as they're called in Greek, are goddesses of vengeance and retribution in the underworld. And they have, like so many other figures, a bonkers birth story.
Okay.
So before the gods, there were titans. Mm-hmm. Before the titans, there were primordial deities. Oh. One of them, the leader, the deity of the sky, was named Ouranos. And remember I said it's common to have prophecies about sons or grandsons killing the father? Mm-hmm. Well, there was another one of these prophecies. Ouranos was told a prophecy that his son, Kronos, would kill him. And so he tried to kill Kronos, but it went the other way instead, where Kronos castrates Ouranos.
Okay.
And then kills him, or like tries to. He's immortal, right? So probably throws him into Tartarus.
Mm-hmm. Hey, post-recording Mike here again. This next section isn't necessarily going to be explicit in terms of using foul language, but we are going to be talking about the origin story, which does involve reproductive organs. So if you are a kid, or if you're a parent and your kid is listening and you want to skip ahead like 15 to 30 seconds, I would recommend doing so.
And when Kronos castrates Ouranos, there's blood, because that's what happens.
Sure.
And when the blood drops fell to the ground, out sprung the Furies.
You already prefaced this with it being wild. That is wilder than anything that I could have come up with. Oh yeah, they came from dick blood? No way.
Yes, they came from dick blood. Aphrodite also came from this same dick blood, except this is the quote of the episode. The Furies were the product of dick blood and dirt, but Aphrodite was the product of dick blood and sea foam.
Oh, all right. That is truly wild. So I know the names of the Furies from Hades the video game are Megara, Alecto, and Tisiphone. And what I know from the game is Megara is more of the jealous one, Alecto is more of the super angry one, and then Tisiphone is just out there. She, for a very long time, doesn't even say words that you can understand. She just kind of screams at you, but she is basically all about murder. So is there any way we know who Mrs. Dodds is? Because that's the only one that we meet. Because I guess I had always just assumed she was Megara, because in Hades the video game, Megara is the main one, and then the other two are kind of her sister sidekicks that aren't as important in the story of the game. But someone recently pointed out to me that Mrs. Dodds could be Alecto, and I think that could make sense.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not sure. I don't know if they had roles that were that explicitly designed, where one of the Furies was in charge of specific types of crimes. As a collective, they were all concerned with murder. That was one type of crime. Perjury. They do not like when people lie.
Okay.
Offenses against the gods. That's common, especially Hades. And unfilial conduct. So if you just go against your family, I guess. And they could be called on by any victim to curse a criminal. And because of their particular bonkers birth story having to do with a son harming a father, a lot of the strongest curses that were made in the Furies' name had to do with parents cursing their children or vice versa.
Okay, and did you have to be a demigod or a god in order to call the Furies, or could mortals call on the Furies as well? Mortals
could curse people in the Furies' name. They could call down the curse of the Furies. They sure could call on the Furies, but, there are only 3 of them. I don't think they could have answered all of them, even if they wanted to.
They get put on the waiting list.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Exactly.
So someone you had mentioned earlier is someone that I wanted to know more about, because it was one of those things where in the book it is such a short description, but such an interesting one. Argus, being a 100-eyed giant, gets thrown in very casually. What's up with Argus, the 100-eyed giant?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say he's so interesting but has such a small part, because he does have a pretty small part in mythology too. I have this big book of classical mythology, and it's basically like a dictionary of mythology people.
Sweet.
And Argus's entry is so small. It's just like a tiny little paragraph.
Oh, no.
So these last names or epithets or titles are important in Greek mythology because there are so many people with similar names. So this Argus, the 100-eyed giant, has the epithet Panoptes, which means all-seeing.
Oh, cool.
So he was Argus the all-seeing. He was a servant of Hera, Hera being the goddess of marriage and childbirth and the hearth. And this is one of those Zeus affair stories. So when Zeus had an affair with a nymph named Io, Hera eventually did learn about the affair. And to protect Io, Zeus turned her into a cow.
Okay.
Which is one of the animals that are sacred to Hera.
Oh.
And so I think he thought that if he turned Io into a cow, that Hera wouldn't want to kill her.
Mm-hmm. But
Hera then sent Argus, the all-seeing one, to keep watch over this cow. Because she was like, well, if you're going to turn this into a cow, I'm going to keep Io as my little pet. And so Argus was set to keep watch, keep guard. And then Zeus was like, no, I don't like the situation, and sent Hermes to kill Argus.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then because she felt bad, and because he was a loyal servant, Hera then put Argus's 100 eyes on the feathers of the peacock, which is another animal sacred to Hera.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. And that kind of makes sense because of how the design on peacock feathers kind of look like eyes.
Yes, exactly. Cool. Argus has a couple other stories in mythology, like Echidna, who did make an appearance in the book. Argus supposedly slew Echidna.
Oh, cool. Go Argus.
Yeah,
well done.
But not many other Argus stories that I could find.
Okay. But that does at least make sense in that he is effectively the bodyguard in the books to Percy. So yeah, that's super cool. Yeah. Another character, Chiron, who is thankfully not the villain. I was very worried that he was going to be a plot twist villain. It's just Luke. Ugh. Ugh. I think you might have still been on when I was pro Luke. I think you were still a guest when I was pro Luke, where all of those things aged poorly.
When did you catch on? Because it took so much control, Mike, to not tell you.
Yeah, you did a very good job because I think you had said, oh, I really liked Luke. I had a big crush on Luke, blah, blah, blah. You did a very good job of not giving any sort of inclination. Once the water messenger, the Nereid, who Nereid is a type of being, I misinterpreted and thought Nereid was one person. But when the Nereid told Percy, don't trust the gifts, then I realized, okay, he's only gotten Riptide in the shoes. We have to be able to trust Riptide. Can't trust the shoes, thus we can't trust Luke. So I 180'd pretty quick, and that has done well for me in terms of me wanting to be on the right side of history. But I did like Luke to start, which sucks, because he is a big stinker. But this didn't happen to Chiron. Chiron... He, in the books, was described as being the one who trained Hercules. I, from my limited knowledge, thought this was Phil. Is Phil just supposed to be Chiron and they give him a different name? What's up with Chiron, and specifically, what's up with Chiron training Hercules?
Yes. A little bit of background on Chiron. Chiron is a centaur, half horse, half man. He is different from other centaurs because most centaurs in Greek mythology were portrayed as very violent and kind of barbaric and savage, but Chiron was wise and civilized, if that's a word you want to use.
Sure.
And that difference between them is explained because Chiron has different parents than all of the other centaurs.
Oh, okay.
All of the centaurs have a set of parents who I think were like titans or giants or like magical horses, whatever. And Chiron's parents are Cronus, the titan, who castrated his father, and the nymph Philyra.
Oh.
And because Cronus impregnated Philyra while he was in the form of a horse, that's why Chiron is a centaur.
That was my next question.
Yes.
I was having the SpongeBob thing where it's sponge plus star equals clam or whatever when people are confused.
Right. No, so that's his background. He was very wise. Some said that he was tutored by Artemis and Apollo in medicine, music, prophecy, and hunting, and all of these things. So he had this renowned wisdom and prowess, and heroes sought him out for training. So it's not just Hercules. It's also Jason, Achilles, I think Actaeon, a lot of different Greek heroes went and trained with Chiron. But yeah, he did train with Hercules and died because of it, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so Hercules had 12 labors that he had to do to atone for killing his wife and going a little bit mad. And when he was doing the fourth of his labors, which was capturing the Erymanthian boar, Hercules accidentally shot Chiron with a poisoned arrow, which caused him so much pain. But because Chiron was the son of the Titan Cronus, he was immortal. But he was just in a lot of pain. And so there are different versions that say he dealt with it in different ways. In some, Chiron agreed to give up his immortality in exchange for Prometheus, the Titan who gave us fire, to be freed. Some also say that Chiron was relieved of his pain and turned into a constellation, like taken up into the sky and turned into a constellation, which is something that a lot of Greek myths say happened. Orion, for example, is another constellation that was a person that was dying, and a god took pity on him and turned him into stars.
Okay, that is super cool. Love that. With Chiron being the one civilized centaur, it feels very much like Firenze in Harry Potter. The one normal / nice one that isn't barbaric, like you said, because that's super the vibe of the centaurs in Harry Potter.
Oh, right. Yeah. This definitely has strong, like, one of the good ones energy.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Big yikes. Someone that was mentioned super in passing, but I just thought had the coolest name, Zephyr the West Wind.
Yes.
What's up with Zephyr the West Wind?
I actually do know someone named Zephyr, which is great. So Zephyr is one of the 4 wind gods. Together, the gods are called Anemoi or Anemoi.
Okay.
And the other wind gods are Boreas, the north wind. And in case you, like me, are confused about these directions, the direction in the name is the direction that the wind comes from. So the north wind is coming from the north, not heading north.
Oh, that's super confusing.
I know, right? I've always been confused by that. So Boreas is the north wind, notus is the south wind, and Eurus is the east wind. Zephyr is considered to be the gentlest of the winds.
Nice.
Because the wind from the west was warm and it carried with it like the feelings of springtime. So there's this association between Zephyr and gentleness, which I think is probably why Rick chose Zephyr to be the person who brought Annabeth down to Earth.
Coolest stork ever, Zephyr the West Wind.
I know, right? But Zephyr is not without his bad sides, too. You know, he's a god. They all have these dark sides to them. There's one story involving Zephyr where he got so jealous of Hyacinthus, which was one of Apollo's lovers. Zephyr also had a thing for Hyacinthus, and one day he saw Apollo and Hyacinthus playing a game with like a disc or something, like Frisbee, but, you know, old and Greek. Zephyr got so jealous that he used his wind to knock the disc into Hyacinthus's head and killed him.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, and Apollo was so distraught that he turned Hyacinthus into a flower, which is where we get the hyacinth.
That's so interesting. I mean, I'm sad that Hyacinthus had to die.
Right.
Cool result, not cool death. Death via Frisbee, not fun. So a thing we had alluded to earlier, something that happens in the book, is you have Annabeth and Percy finally teaming up. And previously, Annabeth had mentioned the only other time Athena and Poseidon, or one of the only other times that Athena and Poseidon teamed up, was to make the chariot with horses made out of the crests of waves, which sounds very cool. What was the purpose of them teaming up? Did they have to defeat some sort of evil? What's the story there?
So this is a place where Rick took some liberties with the myth.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, not huge liberties, but he definitely made it sound like it was an intentional collaboration, like they had to solve some problem together. It was more like Athena invented the chariot and then separately Poseidon invented horses.
Okay.
So Athena is the goddess of wisdom and handicraft, so like sewing and just like making stuff. And so she invented a lot of things. And for her invention of tools like the bridle and the bit and the wagon, she did gain the title Hippeia, which means of the horses. So she was just really smart and invented a lot of things that you can use with horses. And then Poseidon separately invented horses because he was smitten with Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, and he decided he wanted to create the most beautiful animal for her. And he went through a lot of different attempts that ended with the horse. But before he got to the horse, he invented other animals that were kind of horse-like, but not quite. So the zebra, the giraffe, and the donkey were all attempts at making a horse for Demeter that just like didn't quite get there.
It's pretty funny that they are explicitly the less hot animals.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just an ugly horse.
Yeah, like, ooh, this one, its neck is too long and its tongue is a weird color.
Those stripes, they're so busy. Ooh. Okay, that's super fun. The phrase, I don't think I can listen to the phrase he invented horses without smiling. That's just such a funny, oh yeah, what did you do? Ooh, I invented horses.
Yeah, it's a shame none of us can ever put that on our CVs.
Yeah, right at the top. Invented horses. That's a pretty powerful resume. Okay, the final question that I had is something that came up in the books and is also something that was seen in Hades the video game. Is there something special about Ares and his eyes? Because in the books, he's got fireballs instead of eyes, sockets basically. And in Hades the video game, his art style, he has dark skin, but it's a big white band around his eyes, almost like it's either painted there or something different. Is there something special about Ares and his eyes?
When I first saw this question, I was going to say no, and that, you know, these gods can choose to appear to mortals however they want to, and they often do change their shape. Mentioned several instances of that already. But then I started looking into the sources that we talked about at the beginning of the episode, and I found a line from Hesiod, who wrote of Ares in a battle with Hercules and said, you know, this is a quote, but translated, so not an exact quote, but the shining from his eyes was like fire. And I saw a couple other quotes that referenced fire along with Ares's eyes. So I think that that's where Rick got it from. But there are so many depictions of Ares that don't do this that I think it's just like, you know, the gods will appear however the gods want to appear.
Okay.
And he was trying to intimidate Percy, so put some fire in his eyes.
Cool. I remembered one other question that some people had asked about. Is the idea of a camp where demigods train to become heroes, is that something that ever takes place like a central location, or is it just like Chiron and Hercules where people just get paired up with trainers as opposed to a training grounds?
Ooh, that's a great question. I am very tempted. I'm leaning towards saying that it's not a thing and that that's a story device that is very convenient for young adult fiction.
Yeah, I think that's a very much middle grade YA thing, is just, you see it in a lot of places. The place where you train, it's in the Hunger Games, it's in Harry Potter, it's everywhere, especially when you have character who in the start of book 1 doesn't know that they're special. Yeah, I think that that's a thing.
When you have 12-year-olds who are like, I went back to read it again and could not believe he was that young when the book started, because I have this image of the movie Percy Jackson in my head who is not 12.
Right. Yeah, it's really hard with the way media portrays people of young ages. I think they're getting better at it now, but recently I was going through and watching the old Spider-Man movies because I want to watch the new one, and it's so funny in the first trilogy with Tobey Maguire where he was 26 and everyone in high school is in their 20s. They do not look like high schoolers at all. And then even in one of the movies, I think it's the second one, they, you know, when he passes out from stopping the subway, they go, oh, it's just a kid, when his mask is off. It's like, that's Tobey Maguire's a grown man. Like, that is not a kid at all. They do a better job of it for sure with the Tom Holland Spider-Man, where the high schoolers look more like they're in high school. But yeah, it's wild how much a perception of age difference Hollywood puts on us for high schoolers. Like, it's always so strange just to think, like, if I look at a photo of myself from high school and then I look at a show that takes place in high school, it's wildly different.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I could see how the movie would screw it up. But I have not seen the Percy Jackson movies yet. I'm not watching them until I finish the books, because apparently movie 2 has book 5 spoilers in it or something.
Oh,
which is
weird.
I don't think it's anything super major, but people did warn me, hey, you should probably wait. I don't know if when they were making the second one, they already knew that they weren't going to make any more. I have no idea what the history is. I'm sure I'll get to that way down the road, but I've at least seen a poster of the first Percy Jackson film, and he definitely looks older than 12.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that I am happy about that, because I don't want to see a character who visibly looks like they're 12 years old cutting off people's heads.
Well, you might in the Disney Plus show, because I think they are trying to cast it a little more accurately. At least I saw the casting call stuff up, because I think they're just past casting Percy, and now they have calls open for casting Grover and Annabeth. So for 12-year-olds or folks that look like you're 12 out there, get on it. Well, Dr. Moiya, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for coming on and explaining all of these questions, answering these questions, sharing knowledge, giving us so much more information. This helps me understand what we've covered, and if these characters come back up in the future, I'll be a little more knowledgeable. And thank you for doing it in a way that doesn't spoil anything. At no point do I feel like I know anything about what's to come in a future book. The only thing I'm going to note for is, what was Kronos' dad?
Oranos. Sometimes Uranus.
Oh, got it. That makes sense. So yeah, I'll keep note of that name just in case the same thing that happened in book 1 happens again.
Good. Can I very quickly talk about 2 references?
Yes, please do. Yes, yeah. I didn't want to put you on the spot and say anything else that we didn't get to, but if you've got an anything else, please do. We've got time.
Yes, I have 2 anything else's.
Yes, amazing. Great.
So the first is Procrustes, or Krusty, that creepy AF dude who tried to stretch people. That actually is a pretty faithful representation. Procrustes was a character in Greek myths who had these 2 metal beds, and people would come to him and he would put them on the bed, and if they were too short, he would stretch them. If they were too long, he would cut them. And this term, like a Procrustean bed, is a phrase that means like trying to shoehorn something in to fit something that it does not fit. But like an interesting thing that I just didn't realize, Procrustes in Greek mythology is Poseidon's son, which would make Krusty Percy's brother.
Whoa, that is interesting.
Yeah. And he just killed him in cold blood.
And he said a cool line while he did it.
He did, yes. It was very Buffy-ish, like the cool last line before you kill something.
Oh, yeah.
So that was Procrustes. And then I also wanted to make sure I mentioned the Lotus Eaters
from
the Lotus Casino.
Yes.
So if you've read the Odyssey, then you might remember the Lotus Eaters as a tribe of people who eat lotus flowers, except lotus, or loto in like the original Greek, was one of those names that Greeks would use to describe a lot of different types of plants. And so scholars actually think that the lotus that they were eating was opium.
Ah.
Because the seeds of opium look a lot like mature lotus pods, and they bring on euphoria and forgetfulness, which is what happens in the Odyssey and is definitely what happens in this casino. So these kids are just getting high. That's what I wanted to end with.
That is a perfect ending note. Fantastic. Well, Dr. Moiya, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, sharing your expertise, doing it in a fun way. If people want to see you, hear you, consume more Dr. Moiya content, where can they do so? How can they do so?
You can find all of the Dr. Moiya content on Twitter at GoAstroMo or my website, moiamctier.com, but that one's harder to spell. I do host the Exolore podcast about fictional world building. I now co-host a show with PBS called Fate and Fabled, all about mythology, and I have a book coming out in August.
You do have a book coming out!
I do!
Oh, that's so cool!
Oh, I'm so excited about it. It is called The Milky Way, an autobiography of our galaxy, and I tell the story of the universe, but from the Milky Way galaxy's point of view. It is very fun, and it's coming out in August, and you can pre-order it now. It is the pinned tweet on my account, GoAstroMo.
Sweet. We will make sure to link that in the description of this podcast so you can do it and so that I can do it too, because I definitely want to pre-order it from the best place that gives Jeff Bezos the least amount of money.
Yes, you can order it from many different places. So it is about the history of the universe in science and mythology. So there's astrophysics and folklore in the book.
Amazing. Incredible. I like that the book is you turned into a book. What's the opposite of
Yes.
personifying? You're book-sonified Moiya.
Oh my God, that is so accurate.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for joining. Listeners, thanks for listening. And until next time, when we have a whole crop of new myths to discuss after the Sea of Monsters, aka the Ocean of Baddies,
Nice.
I'll pursue you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this special episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor, Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you're enjoying the show, you want to support the show, you want to get access to those new stickers that we have and the pins that are coming out later down the road, you can do so by going to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You'll get access to a bunch of bonus content. You'll get access to our Discord. Lots of fun stuff over there. You can also support the show by getting merch. You can go to thenewestolympian.com/merch. We've got stickers, we've got shirts, we've got a pen that pays homage to Riptide. Lots of good stuff there. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We also have a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian. And you can just check out our website, thenewestolympian.com. Many thanks to our producer-level patrons: Lauda Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Natanya Page, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tough Beifong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Griffin Dork, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't I See We Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Mooney B, Boney Pony, Harlan Christ, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burridge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Aidan Lippold, Josh Sayer, Percy Blue, Josh Wilkie, Martin Anvik, Abby Ryan, Josh Clements, Angela MF, Mary Baumgartner, Shannon Yvonne Aguilar, Wise Girl, Alpacas Are Hope, Finn TZ, Ribbon Monstrosity, Samantha McNamara, Tate Sasson, Emil Oscar Thomason, Roxas 1912, Rafaela, Ashton Gabrielson, Cara Maren, Marco Redhouse, Falcon, Joey James, Christopher William Boucher, and Justin Lux. And if you want to help the show out in a non-monetary way, word of mouth is huge. Whether you reach out to someone directly who you think would like the show, or you post about it on social media, or you leave a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using, any of those things are very helpful, and they help more people find the show, and it makes me very happy. But I'm just happy that you listened to this episode, and I hope you tune in to our next episode, where I will be speaking with Amanda Marin about how ADHD and dyslexia were represented in The Lightning Thief, the good and the bad. But until then, I'll pursue you later. Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's ASMR Mike. I've realized that I've been a feature of this podcast for a little bit now, but we haven't done any of the ASMR tropes of me making various noises around a high-quality microphone, so I thought this would be the ideal time to do so. So what I'm going to do is let you know what noises I'm making, and then you'll hear them. So first, we have typing on a laptop. If you could hear, I typed, "Hello, this is ASMR Mike." Now you'll hear me rubbing my brushed denim pants. Now you will hear me clanking my wedding ring against a coffee mug. Now you'll hear me sipping water from said coffee mug. Now you will hear me rubbing the microphone with my fingers. I don't know how any of this sounded, especially because I run this through audio cleanup software, so we'll just have to see how it turned out. But thank you so much for listening.